All right, today we're jumping headfirst into a massive, high-stakes game of global oil politics. We're talking about India's defiant moves, a really surprising U-turn from the US, and a huge threat from the Middle East that, believe it or not, connects everything. So let's get right into it.
And we're going to start right here with this incredibly bold statement from an Indian government official. This single sentence right here, it really sets the stage for a major geopolitical puzzle that has the whole world watching. Now you have to understand, this isn't just some off-the-cuff remark. This is the official stance of the Indian government. They're making it crystal clear that when it comes to their energy security, they're going to act in their own national interest. Period.
You know, the numbers totally back this up. India has become a massive buyer of Russian energy, second only to China. And we're not just talking about crude oil here, this is the whole shebang. Coal, refined products, making them an absolutely crucial customer for Moscow. So, with India taking such a firm stand, you think the US would have a pretty strong reaction, right? Well, the reaction we've seen has been, well, it's been puzzling to say the least. It looks like a complete reversal of where they stood before.
I mean, just look at the contrast on this. The previous US administration was claiming it had successfully pressured India to stop buying Russian oil. But now, the whole conversation is flipped on its head, with talk about maybe even removing sanctions on that very same oil. That is a huge policy pivot.
This kind of dramatic shift, from stop buying to, hey, we might actually make it easier for you to buy, it just raises one giant question. What on earth could be driving such a sudden and, frankly, surprising change in US foreign policy?
Well, the answer, as it turns out, has everything to do with a very serious threat coming from another major player in the global energy market. The real key to this entire puzzle is sitting right in the Middle East.
That's right. The U.S. policy shift isn't happening in a vacuum. It seems to be a direct response to a powerful threat made by Iran's military, a threat that has the potential to throw the entire global economy into absolute chaos.
And here's the number at the very heart of that threat. Iran has basically declared that if it feels backed into a corner, it has the power to drive the price of crude oil up to an unprecedented and, let's be honest, a catastrophic $200 a barrel.
And this isn't just bluster. They have a pretty simple but terrifyingly effective plan. By targeting key oil infrastructure in neighboring countries, we're talking Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, they could disrupt production just enough to spark a global supply panic. And just like that, a $200 barrel becomes a very real possibility.
So here's the bottom line. A price spike this big wouldn't just mean you're paying more at the pump. No, it would likely trigger a massive wave of global inflation and could easily push the world toward a major economic crisis. So the US is probably softening its stance on Russian oil to make sure there's a stable alternative if, or when, Middle Eastern supplies get disrupted.
Okay, so you have the US trying to prevent a crisis, Iran making serious threats, and all of this geopolitical turmoil. Who actually stands to benefit from all this chaos?
Well, the clearest winner in this whole scenario, it's Russia. Think about it. If the world is suddenly terrified that oil from the Middle East could get cut off, everyone is going to rush to secure a stable supply from somewhere else. That puts Russian oil in incredibly high demand. And suddenly, Russia doesn't need to offer those steep discounts anymore.
And that, in turn, has a direct and pretty painful impact on buyers like India. With those Russian discounts gone, it's estimated that India's annual import bill could jump by a staggering $4 billion.
You know, this idea of accepting some economic pain isn't exactly new. For example, when the previous administration was asked about the risk of an economic meltdown from its Iran policy, the response was to frame it as a necessary evil. This quote suggests that for some policymakers, these potential price hikes are just a small price to pay for achieving their larger geopolitical goals.
So, in the midst of all this chaos, Russia makes one final and really clever move to take back control of the narrative and step out of the spotlight. The Kremlin just came out and announced it will stop telling the world how much oil it sells to India. They've essentially said that the public debate, which they called a circus, is officially over. They're done talking about it. And this is such a brilliant move because by hiding the numbers, Russia shields its most important trading relationships from all the political drama. It quietly strengthens its position in the energy market. Suddenly, the focus isn't on who's buying what, but on the much bigger, scarier question of whether the world will have enough oil at all.
Which leaves us with this one last lingering question. The US administration might call this a short-term crisis, But in a world with rising tensions and where crucial data is now being hidden on purpose, you have to ask yourself, just how short is short term, really? And what will the true cost of this standoff be for all of us?